This shiny new building here in the Silicon Valley was to be the home of several new high-tech startups with dreams of making millions in the computer business. But this building is vacant, and the one next to it unfinished and at the moment abandoned. What caused the crash in computers, and will it last? We'll get answers to these and other questions today as we take a look at the slowdown in the Silicon Valley on this edition of the Computer Chronicles.
The Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by grants from AFIPS, the American Federation of Information Processing Societies, a nonprofit federation of 11 national societies for computer professionals. AFIPS, Leadership and Service in Computer and Information Technology. Additional funding is provided by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Byte. Byte's detailed technical articles on new hardware, software, and languages cover the latest in microcomputer technology worldwide. Byte, the international standard.
Welcome to the Computer Chronicles. I'm Stuart Chaffee, and this is Gary Kildall. Gary, these two computers we have in front of us here are known as orphans in the industry, as you know, machines which when they first came out were highly praised for their technology, their price-performance characteristics, but machines which basically went out of business and aren't being made anymore. And indeed, all one seems to hear about the computer industry these days is disaster and failure and layoffs and plant closings and so on. You've seen this from two perspectives, having founded Digital Research several years ago, and now as a kind of new startup company with ActiveVenture. From your perspective, what is really going on in this industry these days?
Well, there are a lot of components to this industry. Take, for example, the chip manufacturers like Intel are being hit really hard by the Japanese lower prices. Let's say commercial hardware systems, such as the Osborne, are in a market now that's largely dominated by IBM. Take the home market, something like the Coleco, that was something that really never hit the target. After the games, what else do you do with your home computer system? And of course, the software is layered on top of all this, and there's been growth in the software industry, but also that growth includes the growth in number of suppliers, and of course, price erosion there. But I think that the way that we get out of this is sort of the same way we got into it, using innovation in the new technology that's coming along and also innovation in software.
We're going to begin a special two-part look today at the slowdown in the Silicon Valley. And on today's program, we're going to meet a venture capitalist, an industry analyst, a Silicon Valley business correspondent, and one of the nation's leading computer retailers. We're going to begin this program, though, with a background look at how this industry got to where it is today.
Silicon Valley's brief but tumultuous history is marked by unlimited optimism and brilliant innovations, bringing companies sudden success and frequent failure. But if continuing growth has cushioned the Silicon Valley from America's economic problems, the recent news is not so good. In 1983, worldwide sales of personal computers increased 76%. But last year, the increase was only 19%. And this year, analysts predict that sales growth will slow to about 4%. Losses among the two largest home computer makers through June of this year surpassed $600 million. Repercussions in the related industries have been equally severe. Canceled chip orders have created backlogs for semiconductor manufacturers, where sales have dropped by 25% in the last year. The number of American computer makers has declined from over 150 to about 40, with a similar drop among software developers. While poor sales have led to curtailed predictions and a bleak outlook, the reasons for the slump are not clear. The more expensive group of PCs aimed at the business market grew by 25% last year, while sales of machines under $1,000 showed no increase. At worst, it seems that the industry's new self-doubt is based on uncertainty about who is using the product and for what. Putting pressure on PC manufacturers is a growing group of sophisticated buyers who can afford to be more selective and more patient.
Joining us now is Dave Crockett. Dave is president and CEO of Dataquest, the largest market research firm in the computer industry. And sitting next to Dave is Sam Colella. Sam is a general partner in Institutional Venture Partners, IVP, one of the top venture capital firms in the Silicon Valley. Gary?
I'd like to start out with a question for Dave. Clearly, computers and microelectronics are becoming more and more important in our society. If we're talking about an industry slowdown, what industry is it, and really where are the slowdowns occurring?
Okay, I think that it's probably somewhat of a misnomer about a slowdown compared to what the industry's accomplished in 10 years of its existence. The personal computer industry in 1984 was $26.3 billion. In '84 grew over 80%. So I think that this year is somewhat more of a consolidation or a pause, if you will, before expansion. And even then, there are certain segments that have done very well this year. The business computer areas, the higher-end personal computers have done remarkably well.
So in a sense, it's sort of building on the crest of the wave, and then when the crest breaks, then what do you do with the extra resources you have available, in a sense?
That's right, and I think we developed a overcapacity problem. There are over 375 manufacturers. That caused, once demand caught up with supply and the supply outstripped it, we see somewhat of a adjustment period that's going on.
Dave, excuse me one second. Let me just follow up. Was this a case of kind of bad forecasting or bad management within these companies and not planning ahead and getting overloaded with inventory and so on?
No, I don't think that so much. It was just that we've never had an industry that's grown at this phenomenal rate. And in fact, the industry grew much greater than our own predictions at Dataquest. But because it was such a phenomenal growth rate, that it invited a lot of people into the industry. And the supply chain caught up all the way along. As an example, in semiconductors, there's now 40% overcapacity in semiconductors. And some of the semiconductors have had as much as 85% reduction in price since last January. That eventually is going to spur more demand for personal computers as you get better price performance.
Stuart, what I was going to ask is just what affected IBM's dominance or becoming so important in the personal computer industry? What effect did that have on, say, a slowdown in the industry?
It certainly plays a role in the following sense, that they established their channels, reached to a certain level, and then I think this last year set lower goals themselves than they had in previous years. They publicly announced in '84 that they were going to triple their supply of computers, which they did. This year they were talking about doing more like 20%, and I think that's probably about what they'll make.
Now, Sam, from a venture capitalist standpoint, how did you see this whole chain of events take place from the early days, let's say the late 70s, early 80s, where venture capital was very abundant, let's say, to a point now where it's really dried up? What happened there?
Well, I think there was an excess of investment. I believe that's one of the indicators of why there are 375 companies in the business. There were great expectations. It looked like a very large opportunity. Anybody that could build a microcomputer got into the business. Someone that had a concept for the next better computer could get funding. Too many deals were funded, and there was a rush to the market. And all of a sudden, the startups ran headlong into IBM. And I think that's where IBM has had a major impact, is on the fledgling companies. And now today, certainly the venture capital community, which sees itself at the front end of any market, now sees itself as being overinvested and not very interested in new personal computer deals. If you're looking
at let's say the personal computer area and just high technology in general, what do you look for in say a small company nowadays for that growth?
Yeah. Well, what we look for is certainly the same things we looked for before, and that's a well-thought-out plan, a management team that understands their market, and an exciting, unique new market niche. And I think niche is, it's a word that's overused, but I really believe that's the key. We want to find new existing or new markets that the existing players or existing large companies are not paying attention to, and where we can establish a beachhead and then grow.
So in general, I guess the previous approach to this might have been to invest in a company that's very broad-based, trying to hit the whole market, but now you're looking, say, those vertical markets that might be medicine law or whatever that would be, say, in their own right, very, very profitable.
And I think as it relates to this business, it's in the application of the computer rather than in the personal computer itself. And I believe that's an untapped market yet, because people are looking for higher utility of their hardware. They're trying to get greater productivity, improve their bottom line in their businesses, and so they need more intellectual help, and that's where I think the venture capital community is more interested today.
Any idea specifically what that's going to be? You talked about niches and special new markets. I mean, what kinds of applications, what kind of new intellect?
Well, one that I think all of us are interested in and talked about before is maybe the application of CD-ROM in databases, which are now either distributed online or distributed in paper. You know, with the new optical technology we have, we can put those databases, those large databases, on a disk, on a 5 1/4 or a 12-inch disk, and use the PCs we now own for data manipulation, for database handling, for computation or whatever. I think that's an exciting new field, as one in specific.
Dave, let's just take a look at the home market as distinct from, say, the commercial market. What's happening as far as that home computer market?
Okay, the home computer market in 1984 had about a saturation rate or penetration rate in the home of 9%. This year it's up to 13%, so it's continued to grow. However, it's been at more of the high-end type of computer system, the above $500 as opposed to the low-end systems. And to be sure, most of the people that have home computers are using them for business or professional related work. So in order for it to become a true home market, it's going to have more of the kind of applications that Sam mentioned, of where maybe a localized database that could have transactions over the telephone line in order to place orders or to make changes or to get additional information on a localized database.
So you sort of feel that the home application really hasn't been found yet.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this really healthy in the long run? I mean, we've heard sooner or later there's going to be this sort of healthy shakedown, and while it may hurt a little bit right now, are we going to end up with better managed companies and, in fact, a better, more fine-tuned industry after this?
Well, I think that's true, and I think that you'll find that in most, throughout the computer industry, I use the 375 for personal computers, but you can say the same thing for all the peripheral devices, printers, disks. There's probably 3 to 4 too many players today. As that changes, the companies that survive will have lower cost manufacturing, will have methods of distribution. So I think in the long run, it is healthy for the industry, and all industries have gone through this. You look at the automobile industry, any of them historically have gone through such a
Computers are no longer immune from the rules of economics. We have about a half a minute left. Sam, what is your projection as to when things will turn around and in what way?
Well, I believe that the market is plateauing now, and I think we're going to see a stronger latter half of 85 and certainly a stronger 86. And I don't believe it's going to be the dramatic 80% growth we might have become accustomed to. But I think we're going to see an emergence of the applications. I think we're going to see an emergence of new peripherals. I think we're going to see an emergence of making this hardware and this equipment easier to use both in the business and in the home. So I think the turnaround started.
Okay, gentlemen, we're out of time for this part of the show. Thank you very much. In just a minute, we're going to meet a Business Week journalist who specializes in covering the Silicon Valley, and we'll meet one of the country's top computer retailers. So stay with us. Joining us now is Deborah Wise. Deborah is a correspondent with Business Week magazine covering the Silicon Valley and the microcomputer beat in particular. And next to Deborah is Dave Norman, who founded Dataquest and who is now the president and CEO of Businessland, a chain of 61 computer stores across the country.
Deborah, those of us within the industry know a lot of times that the press will take some notion like an industry slowdown and really work it to death. Maybe is that a media hype to sell more magazines, or is there really a slowdown taking place?
I don't think it's a hype at all. I mean, there is a slowdown. There are many firms who are losing money at the moment. Apple Computer shuts down several factories. It lays off thousands of people. And this was once the darling of the personal computer industry. IBM has untold number of machines in inventory. They won't let us know how many. This is a definite slowdown in the industry.
What do you think is the cause of that?
Well, I think, as we've been talking before, it is oversupply. And people ramped up expecting there to be these 80% growth rates, and it had to slow down. So whenever you get a time of oversupply, then you get a glut and companies start losing money.
Dave, do you see that happening in the retail channel?
Gary, sometimes I wonder if I'm in the same business because we, in the first half are up almost 200% from a year ago through this coming June. And so I'm wondering sometimes in terms of the industry. But I think something is really clear. The industry growth rate has slowed, but it's really important to recognize that in the business segment of the business personal computer market, it's still growing 30 to 40% this year. And the big factor has been that one major company has gained so much market share in a very short period of time. I estimate that IBM has about 70% of the personal computer marketplace for business computers in that segment of about $1,500 and on-up segment. So there's been a big shift in market share, and that's causing a lot of dislocations in the industry right now.
So if we have a growth of the retail channel, and it seems to be a slowdown on the suppliers, are you finding that there are just more and more suppliers trying to get shelf space?
Absolutely. There's just, oversupply relative to the available shelf space and to the marketplace, even though the market is, a very strong growing market by any other measure. When you look at an industry growing at 30 to 40%, that's pretty strong growth. But that is down from 80% plus last year, and so there's tremendous oversupply in peripherals and personal computers and across the board.
Now, another part of it just might be, I guess, the overall dollar value that we were talking about. We talk about a growth in terms of number of computers sold and so forth, but is there a price erosion also taking place? No.
Well, I'm really talking in revenue dollars, and I personally believe those are 30 to 40% growth in revenue dollars in this particular industry, and from our own growth we see that. But I'm talking about the business segment now, not the home computer marketplace.
But even in the business segment, Dave, there's been squeezing of margins at many of the other computer stores. There's been a lot of the grey market machines out there which have forced retailers to really cut the prices. IBM didn't have a good hold on the grey market. There was a tremendous oversupply of grey market machines. And a lot of retailers are really hurting now. You've distinguished yourself, okay?
Well, I think there's certainly a lot of competitive price pressures in the marketplace today, but on the other hand, we're finding that our margins are moving up. Our average price has gone up from a little over $5,000 for an average system 2 years ago. It's now approaching $6,000. So even though semiconductor prices and prices are coming down 20 to 25% per year, we're finding that the business professional is buying more power, more memory, faster printers, and so forth.
With those kinds of prices, you're clearly talking about a commercial market.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, what about the home market again? That's that side of the equation. What's happening with the home market as far as you can see at the retail channel?
Well, we have never really been in the home marketplace, and I have trouble understanding it. I guess, my first response is I really don't see at this point where there's value to buy a computer for the home, in all honesty. You certainly, it isn't worthwhile putting your menus into a computer for the home and doing your budgeting. I don't think it's there yet.
Deborah, what do you think?
Well, yes, the home market has slowed down. I don't think there are the applications there for these machines, but there have been a lot of new announcements recently, so there is a new heating up competition among the vendors. We've got Atari, we've got Amiga coming out, you've got Apple positioned for the Christmas, you've got IBM still plugging it out in what it thinks of the home market. So there'll be a lot of hype, to borrow a word from you, this Christmas, and there'll be a lot of advertising. So I think they'll draw some people back into the stores, and the sales will go up again. True to what Dave says, there really isn't an application for the home computer yet. There's a lot of people just buying it as a replacement typewriter or for working at home, that sort of thing.
Now, what about the price now this is one issue that comes up in the software industry, obviously, is the price erosion, the problem of everybody talking about the $50 software product. If we go through standard retail channels, with the percentage margins that we see at distributor and retail level, the money just isn't there to develop software. Doesn't that have also a dampening effect on, let's say, the whole industry?
Well, it certainly would. From our standpoint, even though you have a low-cost software package, it still takes support, and you have to train people to sell that particular product. So that, again, will push people like Businessland into the higher-end segments of the market, and that's happening today. In the vertical markets, computer-aided design software we sell is $2,500 a package. Our salespeople really aren't focused on that $50 software package out there because of the support that is required.
Dave, you say Businessland, business is up and everything is fine, the business market, but if we can talk about Computerland, I don't know whether you think of them as a competitor or not, and we read in the paper, in the press reports, that Computerland's having troubles and laying off people and bankruptcy and so on. Why should there be that such a problem there at their level?
Well, I believe it's a difference between being in the business market segment, which is still a strong growth market, and being in the home market, which is really a very soft, almost non-existent market right now. And I think it goes back to companies really doing their market research and going out there and talking to the customers. There's tremendous opportunities in this market. There's going to be tremendous opportunities for integrated voice data workstations and for really software that will meet the needs of the business in the future. And I think a lot of it is just people designing products or Me Too products that really aren't adding value. As Dave Crockett mentioned, 375 computer companies all building the same basic IBM AT is not going to make it for a successful company.
Deborah, when the next article comes out about how the growth of the industry has really taken off, what's going to be the cause of that anyway? What's really going to enliven this industry up?
Well, as I was saying before, I think that there'll be a new infusion of interest for the Christmas selling season. There's always going to be promotions, there's always going to be new products on the market. It'll be the applications, the new applications, that make the machines more interesting to use.
What about the home market, though, as Dave mentions? I mean, is there a viable market there? You mentioned the new Amiga and the Atari 520 ST. I mean, is somebody going to buy those?
Yes, I think there's going to be quite a market for it. I don't think there'll be the massive growth rates. I mean, Dave Crockett was saying about penetration levels, 13% of the penetration level. That's not very much when you think about what a computer really can do.
But I mean, Dave says there's no useful purpose at home for that computer.
For that computer?
I mean, you've got 13%. Why should those other 87%? What I'm hearing is, why should that other 87% spend $1,000 on a computer?
I'm saying that there will be new applications in the long run. They're not here. They are overhyped. The machines like the Amiga and the Atari are of a lower price performance. I mean, they're lower price, higher performance. And that means that you will be getting new applications. There will be more graphic animation and that sort of thing, and
Things
more
just
CD.
weren't possible
It weren't possible before, as you quite rightly say. In the retail channel, you do have a problem with who's going to sell these things. We were talking about Businessland and Computerland. Computerland is having a hard time finding a market for itself. It has had a margin squeeze problem. It is the largest chain with 800 plus stores worldwide. There are plenty of retailers that are in a difficult time at the moment. The margin squeeze, as we were talking, has really hurt them sorely. The number of stores going Chapter 11, number of buyouts. So the distribution will be a major problem in getting these new computers out into the marketplace.
So maybe there's a slowdown, maybe there isn't, depending on who you talk to, apparently. We're going to continue this discussion next week as we take a look at some of the specific segments in the computer industry, taking a look at hardware, software, and semiconductors. And I'll be back in just a moment with this week's computer news. In the random access file this week, it looks like you can count on PC-DOS on the IBM PC and the clones for some time to come. The new long-term development deal between Microsoft, the PC-DOS developer, and IBM means that IBM will not be moving toward a new proprietary operating system. That prospect had made a lot of software and hardware developers nervous about their investment in the PC-DOS standard. The new confirmation of the PC's open architecture should stabilize the PC market and stimulate new support products for the PC standard. If you're in the home market and looking for a mortgage, you've just found a new use for your computer. There are now several online mortgage database services that will quote you the best rates in your area, calculate your monthly payments, and even advise you on how big a mortgage you can handle on your income. The three biggest online mortgage services are CompuFund, Loan Express, and ShelterNet. Well, some computer magazines may be hurting, but the entrepreneurial spirit is hard to keep down. Despite the current slump in the business, 17 new computer magazines have appeared in the past 8 months. Meanwhile, most of the older established magazines are having a hard time. Ad revenue is sharply down at 9 of the 10 leading computer mags. The slowdown in the Silicon Valley has not slowed down the steady trek of foreign countries seeking to lure industry from the Northern California region. Recent visitors to the valley have included delegations from Austria, Germany, the Netherlands, Thailand, and Switzerland. The most successful so far have been Scotland and Ireland, with some 300 American high-tech firms now located in those two countries. Paul Schindler is back now with this week's software review.
I have a lot of trouble with my mailing lists, just like everyone else, so I'm constantly on the lookout for the ultimate mailing list program. Catalyst may just be it. Now, for one thing, it stores foreign addresses and phone numbers, and that includes Canada. This is the only program I found that does that well. Another thing, I make mistakes. Most programs just let you make them. Catalyst is smart enough to warn you about all the common silly mistakes as you make them, not afterwards. Its screens are colorful. The program connects with a wide range of popular printers at the touch of a key. Now, there isn't time to demonstrate everything Catalyst does, but its menu gives a flavor of just how comprehensive this program is. You can print two kinds of Rolodex cards, as well as labels, envelopes, or bulk mail flyers. Catalyst can be used with more than a dozen popular word processing packages to create form letters. Its input screen is both comprehensive and flexible, leaving little to chance, including a variety of titles. Plus, it has the fastest sort I've ever seen. Catalyst, a truly impressive mailing list program, $250 from Automation Consultants International in Encino, California. For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Paul Schindler.
Where do you go if you want to learn to be a computer artist? Well, the answer was nowhere up until now. But come this fall, the Computer Arts Institute will open in Corte Madera, California, and change all that. Courses include things like 3D transformations, wireframe models, video tricks, computer painting, and introduction to computer graphics. The Computer Foul-Up of the Week award goes to Mellon Bank in Pittsburgh. A memory disk in the computer which runs its automated teller system failed, and so the computer couldn't recognize any account numbers. Well, when the automatic teller machines can't recognize account numbers, they're programmed to eat up the card and not return it to its user. So for an hour and a half last week, Mellon ATMs all around the city gobbled up about 2,000 bank cards. There were lots of screaming customers, but the bank said everything worked just the way it was supposed to. The computer's instructions are, when in doubt, don't give out the money. Finally, in this wonderful world of high technology with computer analysis of this and that, the people at the Intel plant in Albuquerque, New Mexico might be a little embarrassed. They had been having a bad time at their new modern wafer plant with low production yield and equipment problems. Then, despite the best efforts of their high-tech gurus, one worker put up a hoppy Indian Kochinka doll reputed to bring good luck in that part of the country. Call it what you will, Intel says the Albuquerque plant is now its most efficient. That's it for this week's Computer Chronicles. We'll see you next time.
The Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by grants from AFIPS, the American Federation of Information Processing Societies, a nonprofit federation of 11 national societies for computer professionals. AFIPS, Leadership and Service in Computer and Information Technology. Additional funding is provided by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Byte. Byte's detailed technical articles on new hardware, software, and languages cover the latest in microcomputer technology worldwide. Byte, the international standard.